Hi everybody, it's Lori back again today to talk about what I've read so far in January and how I'm doing on my 2023 TBR list. Okay, so let's jump in already. Let's just jump in. Let's just start and talk about what I have been reading so far or what I've read in January. I am doing pretty well, I would say. So I had a really good mix, or at least I think so, of half and half approximately. Books that have been holding over for previous years that I just haven't gotten around to read, and then books that I was seeing on booktube or in the bookstores when I trekked in there and was seeing them, that, books that looked good to me, that I was intrigued enough to want to read. So I compiled those for the list of books that I wanted to finish in 2023. And I'm a list maker. I like to check things off of a list. And so I thought I would start off 2023 with a bang and start reading a few of those books, cross them out off of the list, decide if it's an author I want to continue to read, or, just if my tastes are changing. That's the other thing. I want to kind of expand my reading habits a little bit this year. So I thought this was a good way to jump into that and get started. So what have I read so far this year? The first book of the year that I chose to read was Dead Man Running, if I could say it, by Steve Hamilton. And this is the Alex McKnight series. He does have quite a few books in this series, and I have read them all up until this point. I really like these. This is about a former Detroit police officer who retires after getting injured in the line of duty, who moves up north in Michigan to our Upper Peninsula. I am from Michigan, so that's kind of what initially attracted me to this series. I wanted to read about a character that was in Michigan, and this author does write about places that actually exist, which is kind of fun. And I will say, having visited a few of these, they are very proud of this author and their hometown boy, so to speak. And I see a lot of establishments that have these books for sale, which I think is really cool. So anyway, I wanted to pick up this particular book and jump back into the series. I will say overall, this one was a little bit different than some of the other books that I have read in this series. And I think because it dealt with torture, I'm going to say torture. It wasn't just physical, it was mental torture as well. That is a bit triggering for me. That is not something that I typically like in books or movies, that type of thing. I don't know. It's just one of those things, makes me uncomfortable. And so I felt like this dealt with a little bit too much of that for my comfort. So in this particular book, Alex is pulled into a case with a serial killer that has now been caught, and he has told police that there is still one more victim alive, and he will only take them to that victim, who presumably, hopefully, will still be alive at that point, if they involve Alex McKnight. Alex has no idea who this Livermore is. He's never heard of him before. He doesn't remember any cases in which, he was a suspect. The name doesn't ring a bell, nothing about him. So in the process of this case, Alex is trying to figure out what their connection is and also catch the serial killer while finding this victim. Really, really feels like a game of cat and mouse. There are a lot of edge of my seat moments, but because of the mental anguish and torture aspects, it wasn't my favorite in the series. I gave it 3 stars. If you want to read 2 of my favorites from this series, I would say read either Misery Bay or North to Nowhere. Both of those were fantastic 5-star reads, 100%. This, if you're not as put off by the mental physical torture, you might want to give this a try. It was definitely a high stakes thriller, and I'm glad I was able to read this one and cross it off my TBR. This next book that I finished was The Crossing Places by Elly Griffiths. In this one, this is the first book in the series, we meet forensic anthropologist Dr. Ruth Galloway, where she is pulled into a case of a missing child. The child has been missing for almost a decade, and she's pulled in when some bones are found, and another child goes missing. Letters keep arriving to the police station that taunt this chief inspector, and he wants to bring Dr. Galloway in to see if she can help make any headway in this crime that keeps him up at night, that he hasn't been able to solve. It's to give the family some sense of closure. And then with this other child goes missing, it's just a living nightmare for him. He doesn't want to continue for these things to happen, wants to give the parents some closure. And it was a really, I will say, it's a good mystery. I think it was a little bit long for what it was trying to accomplish. It was trying to throw you off. I think there were some really good red herrings in this. The thing that was triggering to me and that I really didn't care for was there was a lot of fat shaming in here. I felt like this character did that a lot to herself and just basically felt that everybody else would feel the same about her. It was really off-putting. I think it could have been said in a completely different way and not repeated continually. I feel like there were at least 3 or 4 references, at least, probably more, that I tried to gloss over in here about her being overweight, and it just wasn't necessary. It didn't add anything to the story. There wasn't anything like, you know, she had a hard time keeping up with the chief inspector when they were out searching for bones or clues. Nothing like that. It didn't add anything to the story, so I thought it was completely irrelevant. It just kind of irritated me. Now, will I read the next book in the series? Yes, I'll give it another try. I'm really hoping we can move past that. I'm not sure. I would say if it wasn't for that, and if it was a little bit faster paced, I would have given it a higher rating, but I will definitely pick up the next in the series. This next book on my TBR list, so another book on my TBR list that I was able to cross off, was The Last Letter from Your Lover. This one I had started, so I was partially through. I did go back and reread. This one is dual timeline, so there are 2 main characters that are talked about in this book. One in the 1960s and one in early 2000s. We have Jennifer Sterling in the 1960s who wakes up in a hospital bed with no memory of her life whatsoever. And she is told that she was in a bad car accident. Her husband comes to see her. She does not recognize him at all. And she has to try to piece her life back together once she goes back home. She really isn't remembering anything in her life, and it comes back to her in little snippets. Then she finds a letter from somebody that she can only assume is her lover, because he's nowhere. The way that it's written is nothing like her husband would speak to her, and her marriage seems very loveless and passionless. She just begins to question, who is this person? It's not signed with a name, only initial. Who is this person? How can she find him and get back to the life that she is missing but can't really remember? She can't put her finger on it. And so it follows that, and intermixed towards the middle, I would say, our second main character joins us, and this is Elly Hayworth, who stumbles upon a letter written by a man proclaiming his love. How these 2 women intersect and come together was very interesting. Wasn't exactly the way that I was thinking it was going to happen. A lot of these dual timeline books that I've been seeing recently, the way that the author brings the 2 timelines together is often very similar, and I was really hoping it wasn't going to be that way. I like the way that the author did that. In this book, it was a bit different. I liked the way that the timelines crossed over and came together. This was a pretty good book for what it was. There wasn't anything particularly shocking or unexpected in the outcome of this book. I was kind of hoping that it would end in a certain way, which it did, but it took a really long time to get there. I gave it a 3. Typically when I give a book a 3-star, it was good, it was average. I'm glad that I read it. The next one that I read was The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I did do an in-depth review of this book. I'll put a link down below. This one I'd also rate as a 3. This was an interesting book. It was good. I think it was way too long, way too many plot points, trying to distract the reader and posing as red herrings. I think it could have been a lot shorter and some of those elements taken out, and it would have made it a lot better. I have heard that the second book in the series is much better, so I will give that one a try. If it's not, then I'm probably going to stop with the series. Was it a nice distraction? Yes, What wasn't enough that I'm willing to just go out and buy the rest of the series? No, I'll give another book in the series a try and see what I think. I know a lot of people really liked this one, so looking forward to giving the next book in the series a try. Okay, so far we haven't hit on anything higher than a 3, which is kind of sad. But for me, that's average. You know, that's your average rating for books. But then we had a favorite. I'm giving it a 5-star. This is Just One Damn Thing After Another by Jodi Taylor. Oh my gosh, this was so much fun. It was a rollicking romp. I will say, kept me on the edge of my seat. I didn't want to stop reading it. So I read it over the course of 2 days. I just did not want to put it down. I woke up in the middle of the night, got up, had something to drink, and thought, well, I'll just read a few pages. I think it was up for an hour, and I'm like, I have to get up and work the next day. If I didn't have to work, I might have stayed up and finished it. It's that good. I really, really enjoyed this. So this is about a group of historians. They want to be called historians, and they are, that work for St. Mary's. They basically time travel. They don't like talking about it as time travel, and obviously it's very secretive. Nobody knows it's happening except for a very small group of individuals. They travel to time to observe only. They're not there to change time at all. And actually history will strike back if they try to interfere. And it's crazy because some of the things that you don't think are interfering could be interfering. History is not a person. It's just something like a boulder comes out of nowhere and threatens to squish the historian that is changing time. So you have to be really careful. And that can be very problematic because as humans, we are set up to try to help other people. We think about that. We want to help. We don't just want to watch people dying or suffering, but they're there to observe and watch only. And so it leads to some very treacherous moments. They get thrown into some very precarious situations. They're supposed to be just watching, but it's hard to just do that. And you just never really know what event or what small snippet in time could affect the whole time continuum. There were quite a few of these time traveling events, and it was so interesting and so much fun. I don't want to even give too much away because that is part of the fun in this book. I had heard another booktuber talking about this, and it just sounded right up my alley, and I grabbed it, and I'm so glad I did. I have read the second book in the series already. It's on my list, so highly recommend. This is a 5-star. Definitely start with this book. This is such a fun, fast-moving book that I highly recommend. And then, we follow it up with my first DNF of the year, which was The Breakdown by B.A. Paris. Oh my goodness. Okay, so talking about this one, I read a chapter and a half of this book. Within that chapter and a half, I had completely solved the entire case, knew exactly why, who, what, where, when, and how in my mind, just based on that. And I will tell you, I am one of the people that if I'm going to DNF a book, I flip to the end. I do. I flip to the end of the book. And if like the last chapter or so, if it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, I can't put any of the pieces together, I may go back and continue reading. Might, depending. If the book is completely boring and not pulling me in and I'm just not interested at all, probably won't. But if it's a mystery thriller and I think I've solved the case by, whatever portion I'm at, and I'm really thinking I don't want to read anymore, I'll skip to the end. I skipped to the end. I was completely right. And I'm like, how did I do that within a chapter and a half? And I wasn't thinking it was my own deduction skills. It was the fact that the author pretty much laid it all out for you right there. And then the rest of it was a waste of however many pages are in the book. Ugh. So I was really disappointed, but I was pleased that I was right, but I was just thinking in my head, there had to be more. What? That was it? I really want to be hesitant on how much I tell you in case you're thinking you want to read this book. Basically, it's about a woman whose memories are starting to slip away from her. Weird things are happening, or so she thinks. She passes a woman in a car on the side of the road on her way home during a dark and stormy night. She doesn't seem to be in any distress. Our main character, Cass, cannot get a signal on her phone in this desolate area of the countryside. And so she's not able to call the police or get them to that area. By the time she arrives home, she forgets all about it and moves on. So that's all I want to tell you about this case, because like I said, if I give too much away, you're going to figure out the whole darn thing, just like I did. Very, very disappointing and my first DNF for the year. Let me know if you've read this, if you figured that out really quickly. Yeah, I don't think I'll be picking up any more by this author unless they're highly recommended. I was really bummed out. Okay, for the next book, I went back to one of my all-time favorites, which is a cozy mystery. This is the second book in a series. It's Prologue to Murder by Lauren Elliott. Like many cozy mysteries, our main character, Addie, stumbles her way into some of these cases. She decides that the police need her help, and that is the only way this case is going to be solved. In this particular one, the body of a local librarian is found. Not only that, but there comes into question some information that may have gone missing from a book that this librarian has just published about a pirate legend in the area. So while she's trying to solve the mystery of the death, she's also trying to look into this mystery of some pirate treasure. It was good. I would say that I really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 4-star. Typically I give most cozies 3 unless they really intrigue me. I liked this one. I felt there was elements to this that were a little bit outside of what I would have expected from a typical cozy. A lot of times everything is just perfectly hunky-dory except for obviously the fact that somebody died. I mean, the dead person probably wouldn't think everything's hunky-dory, but most of the time people get along pretty well except for like the local busybody. There's always somebody that's causing trouble, but I felt like there was enough angst in this to make it different than a lot of other cozies. So I enjoyed this, and because I've read 2 of these, I will definitely be picking up the 3rd one in the series, and I look forward to it. So I highly recommend, if you're looking to get into a cozy mystery, try this author. First one in the series is Murder by the Book, if you want to start there. But this was fun. I really enjoyed it. Next, we jumped into this huge, intimidating book, Shadow in the Ember by Jennifer Armentrout. I was really afraid to read this. This is one of those things I was saying in my 23 TBR video, that sometimes it just feels a little bit intimidating, but also you don't want to read it because so many people have loved this series. I didn't want it to be over. I know that sounds bad, but sometimes it's like, it's like you have this anticipatory feeling about reading a book. Once you've read it or the series, then it's kind of like, oh, it's over. I can't experience it for the first time ever again. I am so glad I read this book. There's another book in the series, which I did purchase. It is behind me on the shelf. So I will be reading that one at some point coming up. This one covers the life of Sarah, who was one of the chosen ones. She is born as a maiden that was promised to the primal of death. It talks about how she was raised. She was taught to kill because her ultimate job is to get the primal of death to fall in love with her and then kill him. So it kind of follows that he doesn't come for her as promised. So it starts to creep a little bit of doubt in her mind, but events unfold where he does eventually come for her and sets up this whole intriguing, will they or won't they? Are they going to fall in love? Is she going to kill him? What are the stakes? There's a lot going on. There's a lot of pages, a lot of things happening. It was the edge of my seat. There were quite a few times that I didn't want to put it down. I didn't want to go to bed, didn't want to work. I had to do all of those things, but I really wanted to continue reading this. I really enjoyed this one. Hence the reason I bought the second book in the series. I rated it a 4, basically because there were some elements that I felt quite unrealistic. There were some points of time that I was thinking that would never happen. Mainly in the relationship area of the book. Just some things that just didn't feel quite right to me, but it was still good and good enough to get a 4-star rating and good enough for me to pick up the next book. After that, I needed a little bit of a palate cleanser, as I like to say, and I went back to reading a cozy mystery series that I have read in the past, have put aside for quite a few many years, wanted to pick it up again to see how I felt about it now that it's been about 10 years. I would say at least 10 years since I've read this series. I wanted to see how I felt about it. So I picked up Laura Child's Agony of the Leaves, which is about our main character who owns a tea shop in Charleston. It's the Indigo Tea Shop. Our main character's name is Theodosia, or Theo as she's known. Her ex-boyfriend shows up dead at a charity event, and she has to figure out why, how would this happen? He's very well known and well liked in the community, and there's a momentary piece of time where people are questioning, would she have done it? Could she have done it? But she's not really the main suspect here. She's well known. There are quite a few books and cases that she has assisted on. But she wants to really help because at one point she really cared about him and wants to know why somebody would kill him. So this was good. I would say I will definitely continue the series. I remembered a lot of reasons why I liked the series and why I kind of moved away from it. So I'm interested. I'll read another book in the series. I gave it a 3. Like I said, I typically do for cozies. Really good to kind of mix things up and nice comforting type of mystery series. The last 2 also I gave high marks to. This was the second book in this Chronicles of St. Mary's. This was A Symphony of Echoes by Jodi Taylor. Again, this talks about our historians jumping through time. Don't want to give too much of this away because some of what happens in the first book plays over into the second book. And so if I talk too much about this, you'll know too much about what's going on and what they are trying to do. But same type of mission that we have. They are trying to observe historical moments in time. The book starts off with the Jack the Ripper, which was kind of fun and interesting, although until it wasn't, I guess. So I think that's the reason. I will say, here's the reason why I didn't give this a 5-star. I did not like how that ended. I kept thinking, and maybe it's in a subsequent book, I'm not sure, could very well be, but the way that ended was totally unsatisfying. I kept waiting for something to happen, and you'll see why when you read this, which I highly recommend that you do. But it just didn't feel like the right ending for that particular moment in history. So I don't know. I was kind of disappointed in that, and that was the first case in the book, or the first thing that they did basically in the book. So if it wasn't for that, I think that I would have enjoyed it more. The back and forth a little bit with our main character and her love interest, I don't know. I'm hoping that it doesn't continue. I'm hoping this was the end of that because it was a little maddening. That was another thing. This book was also an edge of my seat romp, as they say. And I really did enjoy it. I have the third book back here somewhere on my shelves, and I'm looking forward to diving back into the series very, very soon. And the last book that we're going to talk about in this vlog on catching up with what I've read so far in January was a rom-com, which is not my typical genre that I tend to lean towards. So I've been trying to, my plan for this year is to read a few more of them to see what I like, what I don't like. This was Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and I picked a fantastic one to start off the year with. I didn't even know that this was so highly regarded or reviewed. I had no idea. I just saw some other booktubers talking about it, and it sounded really fun and cute. And it was both of those things. I gave it a 5-star. I loved this book. It made me laugh and cry. I mean, laugh out loud quite a few times in this book, which doesn't happen enough, unfortunately. I think I have a good sense of humor, but sometimes, I don't know, not every book tickles my sense of humor. This was funny. It was cute. It was heartwarming. The ending was different than I thought it would be, or for different reasons than I thought it would be. So basically, this is about a literary agent and her sister who go on vacation to this very small town, whom the sister found out about from one of the authors that this agent represents. It's her favorite author that she represents. And the sister read the book and really wanted to visit this town after reading it, only to find out it's nothing like the author described it as. Instead was this author's picture of what it could be or could have been. And this agent keeps running into an editor that she knows from back in the city in this small town. And it's this whole relationship between the two of them, her and her sister, them in the town. It was so good, so cute, so funny. I devoured this book. I think I have read People We Meet on Vacation. I think I've read that book. I'm going to get it from the library. I don't remember loving it as much as this book. So I don't know that I want to go out and buy it, but I will. I also got this one from the library. I think I will go and get that, or I will put that on hold and get that from my library and see. I read the synopsis on the back of it at the bookstore the other day. And I'm thinking, So I think I've read it before, but enough so that maybe I'll want to pick it up again. Really looking forward to her next book that is upcoming. I will insert that here, but really looking forward to it. And this is an author I will definitely be picking up in the future. 5 stars, 100%. Okay, so that's a lot. A lot of books that we've covered here. I am so excited that I was able to cross off 7 books from my 23 list. That was amazing. Now, I probably won't be doing that every month. Who knows? I'm going to try to keep a consistent pace on these, though, because I don't want to be at the end of the year going, I only finished half. I don't really want to be at that place. I want to read these or read enough, and if I don't like them, DNF them at that point, because there's always great books that are out there that people are recommending or that are being published, or that I want to go back to a series that I never finished. And so there's so many things that are upcoming, so many books that I'm excited about reading, that I just don't want things to languish forever on my shelves. So that is my plan. Looking forward to doing a final wrap up with what else I have read for the month of January with y'all really soon, as it'll be the end of the month before we know it. So until next time, bye everybody.